Hey class, in this video I'm going to talk about nesting and instancing scenes. This is kind of a simple but very abstract topic, but it's very important for all types of animation and kind of digital media in general. And so I think this is a good place to kind of introduce this in a very simple way. I'm going to explain a little bit about what I mean when I talk about nesting and instancing because they may be uh, those words may be kind of unfamiliar in this context, but it's something that happens a lot. If you're, pursuing animation, if you're interested in music production, any really, if you're, interested in video editing, programming, design, all of these things involve this concept. And so I'll try to explain it quickly. So what we're talking about is nesting. And related to that, but separate, is instancing. Instancing. Or like creating an instance. So nesting is basically when you put one thing into another thing. It's very simple. It comes, it's based on the idea of a bird's nest, right? Like a bird's nest. Let's say this is our little bird's nest here. Draw some twigs and stuff. You're gonna have some eggs. Okay, so the eggs are inside of the nest. So that's what nesting is. It's when one thing contains another. This happens a lot in all sorts of cases in digital media, and I'm going to show you guys an example of that with our animation in this video. Nesting gets more complicated because you can have nests within nests within nests, and so then the metaphor starts to break down a little bit. But that's the basic idea. So then instancing is when you take an instance of a scene and you add it into another scene. And so this is kind of related. Instancing is when you have like an object. So you can actually think about eggs for this. Like when a bird lays an egg, you may have like 6 of them or 10 of them or whatever. And they're not exactly the same. They're a little bit different, but they have the same basic properties. And so that's an instance. That's like one instance of this like egg scene or egg idea or whatever it is. And so we can use this very powerfully in animation, especially if you watch a lot of animation, especially high production anime or cartoons. One of the things you probably notice is that they reuse footage a lot. So they'll have some drawings of like a specific action that's really important to the scene, and they'll reuse it a bunch of times, and they might use it in a bunch of other places. So if you have, let's say you have a character and you just have the character walking, this is something that happens a lot in animation. Let's say we have this character walking and we have him walking in this first scene, maybe he's going to the store, and then he's walking in another scene where he's going to school, and he's walking in a third scene where he's going home. So rather than animate the character walking in each one of these scenes, we animate the character walking once and then we copy it into these scenes. And you might need to make some changes, maybe is walking faster or slower. But the idea is to kind of instance our scene into other scenes. And this happens all over the place in all sorts of different digital production, whether it's audio or animation, video editing, as I mentioned. So let's look at how to do that with one of our components of our animation. So in my animation here, we see this. I have this little stars section. It's locked up right now, so if I click on it, it just kind of blinks, but you can see that coming out. And that's pretty cool. But what if we wanted to have like 10 of those to make it like really crazy and have them kind of like different sizes and shooting in different directions? There's a couple ways we could do it. So I'm going to spend a minute demonstrating a way to do it that I don't recommend, just as an example. So don't necessarily follow these steps. So let's lock my text layer and let's grab these stars. So one way to do it is just to make a copy of this layer and make some changes to the properties. So I can right click on the layer. I can go to I don't see duplicate. I might have to go into the layer panel. Oh, no, I don't see it up there. Let's look for it up here. Okay, so let's go to duplicate. I guess it's in the edit section. I actually just usually use the key command, command D, so that's, I guess, why I didn't know where that was. But if we just hit that, we get another layer of stars. So I'll show that again. So I'm gonna hit command D here. So now we have 2 layers of stars, and we can go to our second layer and look at the transform, and maybe we just, change the position a little bit and move it over here. And now we've got these 2 different animations. But they're kind of the same. We could change some other stuff as well. Maybe I drag out these keyframes so it's a little bit staggered. We can do different stuff with that. But notice one thing. So if I go in here and let's go up here. And let's say I go into one of these stars. So let's see. Let's go to one of the stars. Actually, let me turn off my video for a second. So I'm going to click on one of these stars, and let's choose one of these stars. And let's say I change the color. So I'm going to go to like pink or something like that. Okay, so I hit OK. And so that changes, but it didn't update the other one because it's just a copy. And so if I wanted that change to affect all of my sections, then I would need, I would need it to be an instance. So that's the way that you shouldn't do it. I'll show you the way that we should do it. We should make this into an instance. So I'm going to delete this layer. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this stars into its own composition. So if I click pre-compose, this is going to take this layer and turn it into its own composition. Let me show that again. So I right click here, I click pre-compose, and I give this a name. So I'll call this stars. And it says move all the attributes into a new composition. So I'm going to click OK. So notice what happened. Nothing changed in my animation, but this layer now is a composition, not a collection of shapes. It's not a shape layer anymore. It's a composition that points to this new composition up here. So now I can actually animate that composition separately. I don't have access to the animation that I created, but I can animate other properties, or I can change other properties. So I could change the scale a little bit. So now notice what happens. Oh, we actually don't really want to change the scale because it clips. But let's leave that there for a second. Okay, so we've got our stars. Now notice what happens when I duplicate this. Now I have 2 copies of this, and I'm going to move one over just so we can see that there's 2. And maybe I'll move it down, and maybe I'll even rotate it just a little bit, something like that. So now I have these 2 different copies of my stars. And if I go into my stars composition, and let's change the background of this composition because my stars are black. So let's go to composition settings, and I'll set the background color to like a light gray so I can see where they are. Okay, so there's my stars. So let's click on this. So we can change this animation if we want to, make this faster or slower. But now I can also change the star color. So I'm going to change the fill color of the stars. I'm going to choose like this pink color, and let's do that for each one. So I'll just fill, oops. I didn't have access to, oh boy. I'll do that later. I'm just gonna copy the color. So I can't use the color picker because I didn't give Adobe access to my screen, but I can just copy the color hex value from here, and I'll just paste it into each one of these. If you see that happen when you're using After Effects, you can give it permission and just restart the program. I don't want to do that right now because I'm recording, but okay, so now look what happened. So I changed all my stars, and when I go back to the main composition, both of my layers of stars are now pink. So that's basically what an instance means, is that when I have multiple layers of these stars, each one of them points back to the original instance. So if I change one, if I scale it down, it still takes on the original data. And so now I can make a whole bunch of these and place them all over the place. And there's some issues with it because I wouldn't, if I wanted to do this right, I wouldn't have it like cropping at various points. But I'm just gonna, make a couple random tweaks to these. So you can see it gives me a lot of flexibility and possibilities of basically like doing lots of different stuff with all these stars. So, if I was doing this for my own project, I would obviously spend a lot more time refining everything here and making it perfect. But for an example, let's just take a look at this. So now I have a bunch of different stars that appear at the same time. And then we're going to get madness on top. It is hard to read madness against the pink. So maybe what we want to do is we might want to actually bring madness in earlier. So let's unlock this and bring this down here. And then now if I move this, it'll move the keyframe. So let's bring madness in a little bit earlier. And let's put our circle above our stars. So we're gonna have to unlock the circle and put this right here. And let's see how that looks. So we have this circle come in and bobbles around. We've got some stars, we've got our text, and that's pretty good. Okay. So that's basically the idea of nesting a composition. You can obviously do this to like a crazy degree, but I would practice just doing it with something simple. If you look at an animation project for like a big studio animation, there's going to be just, dozens and dozens of nested scenes. You have the animations for each character in different scenes and you bring them into the main scene. So it's a very important skill to be able to work with. All right, so I have one more video that I'm going to show you guys. I'm going to lock these up for now. And in the next video, we're going to talk a little bit about keyframe interpolation, but I'm going to stop here, and I'll see you guys in that next one.